I came in March and I returned, and each time I've been here, we've had a Wednesday gathering that brought members of the community together for singing, for conversation, and the most important part, of course, the thing that we all share, which is the dinner, the food that was so good. And I noticed the first time there was some level of, well, we're not sure why we're here, but people made a presentations and we got some information. And then we tried our different types of singing, and we had that wonderful concentric circles. The circle is such a perfect form for building unity in the Sufi chant. And it was a very powerful experience for me. I really enjoyed that. And then we took a break for dinner and the conversation continued. And then we went to what I'm familiar with when I'm coming from America with this shape note singing, where it's a different shape. It's the hollow square, but it's still very inclusive in the same way, where people engage in the music. And we tried that, and that worked pretty well. And it was a good evening. Everyone had a good time. And I come back again in May, and it was similar, same format with conversations and introductions and singing, but something happened in the meantime. This process of conversation broadened and people became more comfortable. Suddenly, you and I know each other, and we
Yes.
can. I have
Yes.
jokes that I can share with people
Yes.
now, and I know whose wife is a very good curry maker or whatever. And there was the feeling changed, and more of a community was forged, and
Yes.
it wasn't pockets of Asian community and white community. All of a sudden the cards had gotten shuffled and people felt comfortable sitting with one another.
It is definitely a good story that's happening, and a story in the making. And for me personally, when I first came across the kind of concept of the project, it sounded very exciting, because I'm part of a larger group of Sufis who live in the local area, who are born in the local area, have grown into this kind of Sufi tradition of spirituality and spiritual thought, and chanting being at the heart of how we develop our livelihood, whether it's study or work or family, anything. And knowing that there was something similar in terms of origin and roots as far as vocal expression is concerned, that has a spiritual foundation to it, was very appealing. And when I fed that back to our group, everyone was happy to be involved. And coming to the first meeting that we had here at the community centre, for me personally and for those who came along, colleagues, it was still kind of a mystery as to what is all of this. And to get the first sample of Shape Note, and then to get a kind of a big experience at the event that we had, the first event at the A Centre, it kind of, for the group, it gave a genuine connection that we made a good decision to want to be part of this process. It's never kind of thought of just being involved in something for the purpose of a sense of entertainment, showing how two different forms of expression have commonality but also are very different. It was to kind of get involved in an ongoing journey. And coming back to my point of that great story, that yes, I would agree with you that from where we started not so long ago to where we are today, there is genuine friendship developing, and genuine respect that is there between people, which is a greater legacy of this process to date. And from this Wednesday's event at the A Centre, which was less to do with the vocal expression but more moving into the conversation aspect, is a link that we are totally comfortable with, because it is our lived experience, the positive experiences and the difficulties that we encounter in life, in any respect, that kind of are relieved through the process of chanting or shape note in your experience. And we feel that we are revitalized as individual, or we are able to kind of ponder upon challenges, issues, personal or people that we know through that form of chanting or shape note to navigate through life. And it's an integral part of our being. So the conversation on what kind of things matter are important. And as we continue on this journey, linking what matters and how it connects to our expression, meditation, chanting, shape note, we are going to, I'm confident, see further links that can be bridged from two very different things. And we're still excited about, we actually feel that and the guys were making these comments after Tuesday and Wednesday this week, the shape note in its purest form of shape note without the lyrics is much more powerful than when we have the lyrical experience. The resonance of energy was much greater, and we feel that the link with the shape note and the chant is much greater than when we think about the lyrical links. So we're still quite looking forward to that, the mystery of how this can connect. Not necessarily about fusion, but it's in a way building a bridge of two very different forms that can come together. They don't have to intermingle, or maybe it can, and that'll be great to see how that expression happens. It will be unique for us and something to kind of pursue and see it come to fruition, and then to hold on to that experience, that memory, because it's forming its history in the making for us.
It's interesting you say that, because you know, my home is not here. You know, I'm visiting, and this is your home.
Yeah.
And I have a tradition that I'm bringing, and in some ways it's tied, you know, through that Lancashire solfege system, fa,
Yes.
sol, la.
Yeah.
So that, and some of the music, you know, came when we were a colony of England. So there are commonalities here, but they're very distinct traditions. And, you know, we had talked the very first time about, and I had these lofty ideas, we'll commingle these, we'll make them, you know, together. And in a way, we don't need to do that now, because we are participating in each of these strands together. But we don't have to fuse the expression. They're distinct, and they have their own energy, and they're parallel, but we can share them. And I think that's the beauty of forging community for you in this particular place, because you've got people with different cultures and different traditions that they don't have to become one and fused. No. Like in America, we call that the melting pot.
Yeah.
You know, and everyone becomes the same. We're not.
No, exactly. Totally. I mean, what was also interesting in some of the comments from people in the Sufi group is that, including myself, that we could remember shape notes from our primary school experience of singing in music classes. The notes. And even I thought, right, I remember. Even though after that period we've never sung shape note, never had to, but we remembered it. And I suppose for mainstream society, everyone who has gone through kind of state education will have come across shape note in some form through learning of music, but not the case with Sufi chanting. And obviously that's come along with the history of the Muslim community in the UK post-1960s and Commonwealth Education Act to come and work in the mills, and obviously that connects to the Brierfield Mills. So this process is also an opportunity to kind of similarly educate people of roots of sound and music within the Muslim community, and how that has found its tradition and custom within specifically the South Asian Muslim community as far as Pendle is concerned, but the Muslim community globally, depending which part of the world has its own tradition and customs when it comes to vocal expression and sound and chanting and singing. It does take place everywhere, from tribal village in Gambia to a city like Islamabad in Pakistan. It finds its way within whatever exists in that environment. And we found in our experience through the work of the Free Spiritual Centre and the chanting that we partake in at the Brierfield Community Centre once a month, that the people come along, as in Muslims who are not religious necessarily, but they are more drawn to spirituality, and they kind of find a great attraction to the sound of the zikr. And most of the Muslims who come along to the Sufi chanting don't necessarily go to mosque. And the many non-Muslims who come along, either they are of faith, the Christian or Buddhist that we've experienced, also feel very comfortable with the sound and what resonates from the sound. And for example, Julian, who is someone I've got to, again, get to know only through this initiative, a new friendship that's emerged, came to the mosque last night, and he was commenting on how he can connect to the energy that comes from the sound. He doesn't understand the words, but just from the sound, he feels a great connection. And I said, well, I'm the same, because I've learned Arabic to read it, but not to understand it or speak as a language. So as I've gone along over the years, some of the common key words I know the meaning, but there's many that I wouldn't know. And like yourself, I connect with the sound and the energy of that sound. And if one is broad-minded enough, you have whatever your personal identity is and your belief is, but spirituality and energy is universal, that any living thing can harness that, from plant life to animal life to humans. And it's great when people connect to the world in that sense, because they go beyond labels and skin colour and identities, and it's humanity. And that's, for me, another great story out of this process, friendship with someone like Julian and yourself and Suzanne and others, which has only happened because we're on this journey together. And that's, these are kind of very kind of satisfying moments in life.
The concept of the shared commonality of the breath, and that breath turns into sound as and that's that energy that we're sharing with one another in this way, which is extraordinary. And it's the project kind of unleashed that breath for all of us in a way. And I'm so interested. The project is really about a mill. It's an abandoned mill. We're looking in this window into the past and thinking about what used to take place in the community there that brought almost everybody here to this place from whatever part of the world they were coming, whether it's from up, Pendle and the hills coming down to work, or from different parts of England, or from Pakistan or Bangladesh or wherever, this brought them, and people were working together, and the sound of the mill was there, and then became silent. And this window between the abandoned mill and the past and the history is a very narrow one now before it becomes developed. The bulldozers and things are already starting to work there. And we have this just moment of time to imagine a future and what that community is going to be like. Again, the mill becomes full of noise and sound again and gets reanimated. And it's a good time. This is not just an artwork. This is not a performance. Both of us, Shape Note singing is a square because we sing with one another. We don't sing out at an audience. And the Sufi chant is the same way. We become one through that sound. You're not performing it in front of an audience that just sits and listens. And in that way, this artwork becomes a voice for all of us at this window to look into the future. And we've had so many interesting conversations along the way
Yeah.
that it talks about all of the things we might not have talked about
Yeah.
at all. And you're very much a part of this whole community through the Bridge movement that you've
Yeah.
convened, that allows people to talk to one another. And ordinarily people would think, oh, that's not art.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
very much a part of this whole artistic expression that's culminating in some new future for our communities.
Yeah. It has been a shame that the mill, specifically what used to be the Smith and Nephew mill, has kind of that history has been forgotten, and many other mills in the local area as well. And as I say in history, and it's not very long ago that it was the central point for thousands of people in this area. Work, home, whatever you were you managed to kind of accumulate as far as finances are concerned, determine the quality of life, whether it's food and or leisurely pursuits, everything stemmed from that. And for younger people to be aware of local history is so important, and it's also another theme that can be and will be used to get people talking again, because they've got common roots in terms of their parents or grandparents who spent on average 25 to 30 years of their life in that space, working long hours, working hard. So
This is where the history is so important. I went to Marsden Heights Community College, and the question was asked, well, how many of you had parents or grandparents that worked in the mill? And out of maybe 30, 35 students, one raised her hand.
Yeah.
And then Vash said, no, I worked with your grandfather. I worked with your mother.
Yeah.
I worked with, and all of a sudden it was like, they did?
Yeah.
And so it's that dawning of awareness that even the younger generations are taught.
Exactly. I mean, some families will speak about this. I do. I mean, my children are very young, as in 6 and 7, but as they get older and more mature, again, I will. That it was, in a way, the sacrifice of their parent or their grandparents to work as they did in manual labour, so that they could make things easier for their children. They could go to school, they could get education, they wouldn't have the pressure of having to leave school and go straight into work to kind of provide for the family. They would do as much as they could, long shifts, overtime, extra time. You know, if you name it, they would do it so that their children would have greater opportunities. And that reflects in society now, in Pendle, for example. So if you take the first generation of immigration of people who worked in the mills and then decided to bring their families over to live here and consider this being our home, because that initially was not the intention. It was, we will work here to send money back to our families, because that was home. Pakistan was home. And how can we make life better in Pakistan? And that changed for many people as they began to settle in this country. And today, if we take Pendle just 2 generations down the line, we have people have excelled in political fields, in medicine, in academics, in manufacturing. So a young Asian person today would have so many role models to look at than, say, what I did when I grew up. It was either you saw a bus driver or a taxi driver or a factory worker. That's the only Asian person you saw. And I remember the first time in school when I saw an Asian teacher, and for your self-esteem, it was like, wow. And I say that today to some of my Polish friends, in terms of the Eastern European community that settle in Pendle, that to get involved with building bridges and some of our work as volunteers and going to schools where we know there's some level of Polish community, and what that will do for that child in terms of his or her self-esteem, to see a Polish person up front in a teacher's role. It gives them a role model to look towards. So young people today have much that they can aspire towards, and I will link that back to those parents who did a solid graft, if I use kind of some local jargon, in the mills, and basically had no life. It was just work, come home and sleep and eat and then go back to work, because of that exhausted. There was not much else to do. Any time they could find extra to work, they would work that time. And so it's important for, that'll be a similar point for someone from any background, because it was a poor working class community, Pendle. So I suppose that is the same across the board. So it's important when we come to the historical aspect of how vibrant this big place was, this industry, and now it's gone. And most young people don't know of the history. And again, that as a legacy of this project, we've kind of mentioned the art forms, the shape note and the chanting also have their roots through the history of the mill. But that specific history all of this needs to be connected and in some way formed as a resource to be accessed by schools to teach local history. So it should never be forgotten, because another generation down the line, it's just another place that people may see, drive past, and they won't know anything different.
I don't mean to get political, but we're living in a time in America, a country that was, opened its doors and is a country of many countries, many people. We're dealing with immigration right now. England and the economic union in Europe, all of you are dealing with immigration, and we need to understand history, how these people came over and enriched the country, and that brave act of leaving Pakistan and family and village and home for generations to make a new home, and now you're English, and what your children and your children's children have done here in creating a much better future in some ways, and we're still dealing with immigration.
I mean, prior to kind of South Asian communities coming to come and work in England, the attachment to kind of the Commonwealth and the Empire at that time was through the British Empire being involved, being in India at the time, the Great Eastern Company and other things, being involved in the wars, the First World War, the Second World War was obviously close to the time of pre-immigration into the UK, and that was a connect to kind of England and the Commonwealth, and even from Pakistan alone, figures through research have shown maybe over a million men who left their villages and their families to fight in the war, who died in the war, and post the war, the economic situation kind of coming up to the Commonwealth Act to come into the UK, it was considered a foreign land, but there was still some kind of connect to the Commonwealth, so it wasn't totally alien. So the sense of thinking that actually yes, we could live here was quite easy to kind of be kind of a natural progression of thought as people became settled, because there was some sense of connect for people beforehand. And again, these are important parts of history to share. And if we think of England, UK, and the appreciation of culture, language, dress, food, singing, all of these kind of things came with that immigration. Before that, who would ever have a curry in this country, or who would ever listen to Asian music or see Asian dance or any form of Asian art? Was not there's no means of having that introduced to the common community, besides those who are kind of within the business sector, people who travel abroad. They may have brought some cultural experience back with them, and there is some of that history in Pendle, in terms of the lord of the manor who had trade links, and he or she would travel abroad and they'll bring things back. Some of the people within the closer circles of being involved with the lord of the manor would experience some of those things, but the common work in agriculture or coming into the mills wouldn't experience that. So it was an introduction of so many things, again, into the history of the local area, into the Brierfield Mill, of someone with a different language who brought his own packed lunch into work. It wasn't a sandwich, it was like a curry. What is this thing? Wow. Or had some sounds that he listened to. Wow, what is this? Different instruments, and that all of that has grown as well in terms of Asian or Muslim culture of music and dress, languages. There's so much diversity to experience, and is it not a great thing that you have choice today that you didn't have, say, in 1955 in the UK? If you want to go out for a social evening around food, there's so many restaurants you can choose from. But if you went back to 1955, for example, what level of choice would you have? These all beautiful things that have happened through relationships forming, people feeling that we are citizens of a shared society, and we want to share what we have.
That's one of the threads, I guess, of our conversation again. We have two very distinct and different art forms, but the commonality is they're both art forms, and that we can share in. And the cuisines, we have so many choices. You don't want them all to be the same. You don't want to fuse them so you've got curry with mushy peas or something like that. But the pleasure of sampling each of those and respecting them and enjoying them, whether it's Shape Note singing or
even though the Asian community have done that, they've taken traditional English dishes and made an Asian version of it. Shepherd's pie or Lancashire hot pot. So you'll have to try an Asian version of that, and it works. It works.
Fusion.
But, I mean, if through this process, those who are open to kind of engaging, that for me is great, because there's more learning and more sharing taking place. And at the same time, those who may not feel as a greater connect, there's a chance to engage in conversation with that person to find some point of where we meet as a community. And even if that leads to a greater level of understanding and respect, even that is a positive thing. And even if it rattles the cages of those who are very anti, we must just live on our side of the street and not have anything to do with that person, even that rattle for me is a positive thing, because it's saying you should not feel comfortable with that kind of mindset in today's society. And quite rarely there should be a sense of stigma for someone who feels very much wanted to be reserved and withdrawn from anybody, just purely on if it's skin colour or faith background or any kind of lifestyle choice should not be a reason why you want to distance yourself from a person. For me, the only justifiable reason would be that it's been a negative experience, that that person has been aggressive or said or done something which is not acceptable, therefore I don't want to have a relationship with that individual. I can understand that. But if it's just purely on prejudice or misunderstanding or ignorance, so this initiative is like many other community initiatives when they engage, it's all positive, even for those who don't engage, and it rattles them that why are so-and-so doing this and why so-and-so, that conversation is, hopefully if it's accessed, someone is able to challenge and give the rationale as to the why, and either they'll understand something or nothing, but they can see that society is moving on, that people are able to do these things, rather than some kind of delusional conception that goodness doesn't take place. Goodness does take place, and this is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Building Bridges meeting in the little group that I was in, one of the things that was written out in big letters as the obstacle to this taking place was fear.
Yeah.
And the fear is the unknown.
Yeah.
What happens inside a mosque? Am I going to become Muslim just by walking in the door? Will they allow me to do that?
Yeah.
Will they
Yeah.
make me feel
Exactly.
welcome
Yeah.
or not.
Mm.
I walked in your mosque
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
chanting,
Yeah.
and it was the most wonderful,
Yeah.
embracing, uplifting, and that's why
Yeah.
Julian, is coming back for
Yeah.
more, because the fear is gone,
Yes.
and the bridge is there, and there's
Yeah.
music that enabled it to happen
Yeah.
as the first step. It's
Some
more than the
commonality.
music,
Yeah, that's right.
but the music is the bridge.
And if you're engaging or you're encouraged to engage or someone's facilitated something for you to kind of come out that comfort zone, I believe there's always growth for people because prejudice can only be overcome when you kind of encounter by, sometimes you only realize you have prejudice, you encounter by a certain situation and it may kind of act as a barrier towards yourself and you think, all right, why do I not want to get involved in this? And you realize that, hang on, some kind of discomfort has been there. And hopefully you overcome that and you become a better person. And so when initiatives like this happen, they do put people into those situations of what they would normally not be involved with. And hopefully good-minded people will address internally and they'll overcome that. So no one can say, I would not say to myself that I have no prejudice. I like to think I have an attitude that I would not like to carry prejudice. But we all kind of develop thoughts as we go along, but sometimes situations happen and I would like to think that I would try to overcome that prejudice to become a better person. But if there's no engagement taking place, those challenges will not necessarily come. And one of the philosophies that we hold within our Sufi group is, which has traditionally been passed down over thousands of years as a fundamental principle within Sufism, is to associate with people, and goodness comes from association. Whereas if you don't associate, you're not put into challenging situations of reflecting upon personal attitude, because we may think, I may think, for example, I'm a really patient guy, but I realised when I got married how patient I was. It gave me a reality check.
Yeah, this speaks to why I'm here in the first place. This is not my home. I have so much to do at home. Yeah. Why am I over here? I woke up one morning, I'm going, what am I doing in this place? I didn't know anybody. I came to this place. Why am I doing this? And it's not without it. There's no pay. There's nothing except all of a sudden I put myself in a place of going from wanting to have people like me so I can make this art project happening to going, I do like these people. Yeah. I genuinely like these people. Yeah. I want to spend more time with these people. And it's the association that you're talking about. Yeah. I've stretched myself beyond Kentucky, beyond the United States to become part of the world and I'm making this my home.
Yes.
As well as my other home. And you care about your home.
Yes.
And I care about being here.
Yeah.
And that's why I really like you. And it's good to be here with you. So.
Is that a great note to end on?